make sure to follow us on Instagram at Whistlethrowers. It's a great way to interact with our show. Our DMs are always open for questions, topic discussions, and more. You will be able to find our new episodes and other announcements there.
These are things that are going to be on his mind. He's going to walk into a stadium with a bunch of signs, with a bunch of people screaming at him. It's going to get in his head.
Thanks for tuning back to the Whistlethrowers podcast. This is Jack Mubarak, joined by
Jack Slaymaker.
And we got a full slate of NFL games to go over. We had the Thanksgiving games on Thursday. Why don't we start there? We could start with Detroit because they keep on seeming to lose on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Detroit's really struggled on Thanksgiving, especially the last, 10 years probably, and more than that even. I get the tradition for the NFL trying to keep that Thanksgiving game there.
What is the tradition anyway?
That was the first place a Thanksgiving game was played in the NFL. So that's been the ongoing tradition. I agree with that. I think Detroit should get the Thanksgiving game every year, the early one. I think it was a good idea by the NFL putting Buffalo into that spot because I know that they cycle division rivals for Detroit and Dallas, but then there's always a year where a different team is sprinkled into it. And I loved the decision by the NFL to do Buffalo this year for Detroit. I just think that it's a good idea when you get that to that spot when it's not a division rival for Detroit that you put one of your marquee teams in that slate. I thought it was a great move by them to put Buffalo in. And honestly, Buffalo didn't really impress, though. They kind of struggled throughout that game. Detroit's defense looked surprisingly competent against them. Going into that, you thought Buffalo was going to hang 50 on them, and they really didn't, and they really struggled. And their red zone struggles continue. Aiden brought that up last week, that they struggled in the red zone against Cleveland at Detroit, and then the Thanksgiving game in Detroit, same kind of thing happened with them. Obviously, they squeak it out. Going back to the tradition, I think a lot of people don't want to see Detroit in that slate anymore. A lot of fans in the NFL don't want that. But I disagree with that. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't really care.
Yeah, I kind of like the game, and honestly, Detroit finally showed at the national level how good that they're actually playing at this point in the season.
Right.
Their record definitely doesn't show it, but they've played some very competitive games the last 4 or 5 weeks, and they were definitely disrespected. And yeah, they lost the game, but it was only by a field goal to a team that everyone picked pretty much to win the AFC. So this was a great game for Detroit. Unfortunate the way it ended, but it was finally fun to watch the early window Thanksgiving game. That just hasn't been the case for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, honestly, all 3 games were really, really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were all high scoring, and you don't see that every year, so It was really refreshing. And Detroit did play well. I thought they were going to pull through late in the fourth, but Stephon Diggs drove down that field single-handedly.
Yeah.
And they got that field goal, and that just did it for them. So, but this was like the first game that Detroit played in Thanksgiving where I didn't really mind because the last 5 or so years have been like abysmal and didn't turn the TV on the last couple of Thanksgivings when the Lions are playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your point about Allen definitely leading the team down the field that last time. But also, Stephon Diggs was completely wide open on that pass. Like, yes, it was a terrific pass, but there was no reason Diggs should have been anywhere close to that open 40 yards down the field.
Yeah, like he single-handedly brought them like all the way into the red zone. So that's what I meant by that. But
I mean, yeah, and like I said, kind of, but also, again, like, yes, it was a great pass, but Diggs' route running, first of all, really opened it up. And it just also showed how far the Lions have to go still.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's no reason for any wide receiver to be that wide open downfield.
I think also, I liked your point, Aiden, about Detroit was finally able to show class some things that they can do. They're not an amazing team or anything. That's not what you were saying. But yeah, you're right. They're better than their record. They've played teams extremely competitively this year. The Bills they lost to by a field goal, who is one of the number 1 teams in the AFC. The Eagles they lost to by a field goal, who's maybe the number 1 team in the NFC. They beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, which is a team that has owned them for forever, pretty much. And yeah, I thought that, they showed some good things, definitely. And you're right about that last point too. Like, they also showed that they do have a long way to go. That being said, I think Detroit finally has a solidified coaching staff and the first coaching staff that they can really rally behind since Caldwell was fired. I mean, pretty much I don't want to say pretty much no reason, but
there was no reason.
yeah.
Absolutely none.
And I think that Dan Campbell is a good hire for them. And you can tell, like, Detroit isn't necessarily depleted of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Like, they have a good O-line. They have some good weapons. Defensively, they are depleted of talent. And they play better than what they are on paper. And I think that's a huge testament to the coaching staff.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have a very young defense. Aiden Hutchinson's a stud. We all thought that going the season, but he just has exceeded expectations if that's even possible. The rest of the defense is shaky, but they're still going to have a decent draft pick this year.
Yep.
They should be able. Oh my bad. They should be able to build up in the draft, though. Getting Jameson Williams back this week is going to be huge for the offense, which has played, like Zach, you said, very well, even without him, who was their first round draft pick this year and was expected to really help this offense. So I think that they've got, if they could put together, let's say, 3 more wins this year, finish like, I think that would put them at 7 and 10. That would be a good year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. That's over their Vegas total. So, yeah, I would definitely consider that a great year for them. At least a building block year.
Yeah.
No doubt. And the next game that was played was the one that I circled on the calendar. And I think this was everyone's game that they were looking forward to most on Thanksgiving. It was the Giants and the Cowboys showdown. And personally, when I was looking at this game, I thought this was a battle for who's going to finish second in the NFC East. And it was a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be. I said this many times before, but the Giants are way better than I thought they were. And I was denying it up until like week 8, but I can't do it anymore. They're a good team. Daniel Jones is no longer the worst quarterback in the NFL. Yeah, Dallas pulled through. It was a tough one. They went up by 8 and just held the lead. It was a high-scoring game, but like the defenses for both sides showed out, even though it didn't look like it on the score column.
It's crazy how Pollard has just hidden behind Zeke for the last couple of years, and 2021 and 2022 have really been his coming out party. He's shown a lot, and when he hits the free agent market, which I'm not even sure he will at this point, because I don't know why you'd want to keep Zeke over Pollard if you're Dallas. I think Pollard fits that offense way better. But if Pollard does hit the free agent market, he would be one of the most sought-after running backs in his free agent class, without a doubt.
100%.
Everything he brings, like, he's a great runner between the tackles, but once he's in space, he catches the ball out of the backfield. He's really tough to tackle. He's extremely fast, explosive. So, yeah, he's everything you want in a running back. And the major key with him, too, is he's been able to stay on the field. Availability is, your best ability. And Zeke, unfortunately, hasn't been able to stay available. Pollard has. And when Zeke has gone out, Pollard fills that role exceptionally well. And even when Zeke is in, you can't just go away from him. The ball has to get into his hands. He's a huge part for their offense.
Yeah, no, 100%. The other thing about this game, and this is what I said last week about the Cowboys, it's coming true. They're utilizing both running backs, and it's making a huge difference. Because Elliott ran for 16 carries, 92 yards, and touchdown. Pollard, 18 carries for 60 yards. When both of them are at the top of their game, there's no stopping this team.
Yeah, that offense is scary.
Yeah, and I felt like this was the biggest thing. Not necessarily praising Zeke, although I do agree. I think Pollard at this point is a much better running back than Elliott. Whether it's just because Elliott's been injured or was out of shape the last couple of years, I'm not sure, because Elliott's looked much better since he's come back from his injury. But Pollard's also balling as well. The other reason I think that the Giants lost this game, I was just going through who was catching passes for them. Their wide receiver corps is horrible. Darius Slayton should not be your top receiver. If that's your top receivers, then you have a lot of problems offensively. And the other issue is, it's fine if Saquon can cover it up, but Saquon only ran for 11 carries for 39 yards. Yeah, he did get a touchdown, but that's not enough yards to carry your offense.
Yeah, that's not going to win you the game, especially with that wide receiver core.
Cowboys' defense is too good for the wide receivers that the Giants have.
Yeah.
So it feels like that the Giants need to sign someone in free agency. Maybe they sign someone this late in the season, maybe you sign Odell. But even then, I don't think that's going to be enough for all of the gaps that you have.
Yeah, do you think this game was like the battle for Odell?
I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it's going to sway Odell either way, especially because it was so close. Like, maybe if one of these teams had blown out the other, then yeah, that makes the decision. But also, the Cowboys right now, like we talked about last time, they're a wild card team still. Unless the Eagles horrifically slip up, they're going to be a wild card team. So you might also, if you're Odell, want to be looking at when these higher seeds want to play a home playoff game. Maybe you look at the team that's the best chance of getting the bye. I mean, I don't think the Eagles are going to get them, but maybe you look at one of these other teams that need a wide receiver as well. So, like I said, don't necessarily think so, but it definitely could be more appealing to Odell to be like, oh, the Cowboys are going to have more weapons that I don't necessarily have to be the top guy anymore. Because as you saw with the Rams, he didn't necessarily want to be the top guy. He just wanted to be on a winning team. And if you go with the Giants, there's no winning team, you're going to have to be that top guy. And I just don't know if that's Odell's ambition right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I think Odell's self-aware, and he realizes that he's not going to carry a receiving core as the number one option. And he realizes that he can fit in other places really well as a 3, probably the 3rd receiver. If he went to Dallas, he'd probably be the 2, which
He'd definitely be the 2. I think he passes Gallup.
yeah.
For the 2.
And I don't think that's a bad option. I don't think OBJ 2 is a bad option.
So where do you guys think he's going to end up signing?
I think Dallas
Yeah.
is the front runner, and I think it makes sense for him too. But I know it's like Giants, Cowboys, Bills. I mean, the Rams are out of it now because they're not in contention for anything. So I know those 3 have been the favorite, but I wouldn't rule out any of the other contenders. I wouldn't even rule out Kansas City. I don't think that they're necessarily looking, but I think if the opportunity presented itself, I don't think that they deny it, you know.
The 49ers would be sneaky.
Yeah,
too,
that's
if he
it.
went
I was
there.
going to say them
That's
next.
team
The
that I was
49ers
saying,
too.
If you're looking
Yeah.
for a wide receiver, that's a team that could use another one.
Yeah.
Sort of like what happened with the Rams last year, where we already have all these weapons, but why not add another one for a playoff run?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because without Odell during that run, the Rams would not have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, they actually wouldn't have.
So it shows that you can still add guys late in the season that might not make a huge difference. I mean, even look at a smaller example, Deshaun Jackson. What he's helped do for the Ravens offense is totally open up the vertical threat. Something the Ravens did not have this year. And yeah, it might only be 1 or 2 plays, but 1 or 2 plays can make a difference with how tightly contested the games have been this year.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic of the Raiders, the Ravens, they lost to the Jags this week. And my question to you guys is, do you think Lamar is playing to the standard that he wanted to during the contract negotiations in the beginning of the season?
I don't think so. As much as I like Lamar, I really do like him. And we've all agreed on the quarterback contract situations in the NFL. Like, it's not very smart to pay a quarterback $200+ million. And Lamar really needed to have an MVP campaign this year to get that, because the Ravens have fizzled out under him a lot of times, especially when they went 15-1 and lost their home playoff game. They beat Tennessee in the wild card that COVID year, fizzled out because Buffalo destroyed them. And obviously last year Lamar missed a lot of that second half. I think the whole second half, actually, with injury.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So I think that this year he needed the MVP campaign. And I thought he was off to the right track. And then it's kind of been the story with him. He kind of just slips to another notch or 2 down. And that's not someone the Ravens are going to pay $200 million to. Like, it's just not. And he has time, though. Like, there are 6 games left. And then the Ravens should be in the playoffs. So he has time. Like, you could take these next 6 games and a playoff run, and you can run with it, and they'll pay you, you know.
Yeah, I think it's like less important on like how he does in the next 6 games and compared to like how well he does in the couple playoff games that he gets into, because that's been like the main knock on him, besides like obviously him running versus throwing.
Yeah.
So I think if he has a good playoff campaign, then they might see the value in paying him $200 million, but I think it might be best for him to go to another team at this point.
Like for him
Yeah.
specifically?
Mhm.
Maybe. I don't really know. I mean, he's going to be asking for a hefty price. There are going to be some teams maybe that want a QB. The one I'm thinking of, I actually thought about this Sunday night after the Eagles beat Green Bay, and I was thinking about Rodgers' future a little bit. I thought Rodgers was a interesting candidate for the Jets QB job next year, but the Jets will definitely be in the mix for QB. They definitely feel their QB away, and they have weapons on rookie deals, so they'll be able to afford a Lamar Jackson asking price. So I kind of agree with you that maybe a new destination would benefit him and the Ravens too. You know what I mean? I think that the Ravens kind of need to readjust and like recenter their foundation a little bit, because they've had like an incredible run attack these past 3 years with Lamar, and even coming into this year, they were supposed to be like a prolific offense with him, but I kind of think that they've been figured out, and I don't think that their offense can win them games anymore the way that it could in the past, like especially Lamar's MVP season.
Yeah.
And the defense just isn't good enough to win you games either, really.
The other thing about Lamar, and the first 3 weeks, so going back to what you said, Jack, about his hot start, he had 12 total touchdowns in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he's at 8 total. That's not good enough at all. The last time they threw double-digit touchdown passes was their win against Tampa Bay. And that's been the only time since week 3. Those numbers just aren't good enough, and I understand that the Ravens want him. I think the Ravens do want him as a franchise quarterback. So I think every team in the NFL wants to figure out, do we have that guy?
Yeah.
And it would be nice for the Ravens if they did. And I think they feel comfortable with Lamar starter. They just don't feel him as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right.
The other interesting thing is what's happened in college football this week for quarterbacks, because not only is the class of free agents going to be stacked, so is his draft class for a couple of quarterbacks. But C.J. Stroud just did not look good against Michigan. I understand that he's had a great college career and all that, but he looked flat out lost against Michigan. His reads felt too long. It felt like that he had wide open passes, that he was just waiting for his receivers to get to the route instead of throwing it to the receivers were going to be. And I understand you have time to fix that, but if you're looking to win now in the NFL, you don't have time to develop a quarterback.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't think the Jets like meet the timeline of like drafting a quarterback and like going through the process. We've seen it many times with that team where it just didn't work out, and they can't like take a chance with this group they have right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And one of the things I said is maybe the Eagles trade the Jets for that draft pick if it finishes in the top 5. I don't think the Jets do that anymore. I think that they're looking at for a veteran quarterback, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, or somebody else. Because the other thing, too, that's not being brought up, and I kind of understand why, but also not really, Gardner Minshew's going to be free agent. That's a guy that, although he doesn't have the athletic ability of a lot of other NFL quarterbacks, he consistently wins games and did it for a team that should not have won as many games as they did.
Yeah, he's a starter, and people are going to realize sooner or later.
Yeah, and he had a 93 rating with Jacksonville, which is like incredibly impressive to me. And he put up good numbers with, like Aiden said, not a team that you should put up good numbers with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that you have a lot of under-the-radar quarterbacks, some higher, obviously, but there's a lot of under-the-radar guys, too, that could potentially be starting quarterbacks next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams hold off on drafting rookies and which ones go in. I think the Panthers go all in on a rookie at this, but that's sort of the only one to me that really sticks out. I don't really know any other teams that are desperate for quarterbacks right now.
Have they even like tried Corral out yet, or they just?
They have not, no.
No, they haven't.
It could be worth a
I
shot.
wonder maybe they're looking for someone in this draft class.
Yeah.
Because Sam Darnold got his first start this week, and he wasn't turning the ball over or anything, but his numbers just weren't impressive. He had 164 yards and 1 touchdown and 1 rush touchdown. I mean, there's better options. I would throw Madden at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you could, but also at this point, why? I think part of the issue, too, with the Panthers, you just don't want to throw in a rookie quarterback. And the other thing, too, is that Wilkes is looking for another head coaching job. He wants to use this opportunity to springboard his career again. Because he got screwed over by the Cardinals.
Yeah.
100%. That was a team that was set up to fail. He finished 2-14 and got fired for Cliff Kingsbury, who also might get fired by the end of this year, by the way, because he has not done what the Cardinals thought he was going to do.
As he should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So I think Wilkes is now looking for that other NFL job, which he should get, in my opinion, considering where the Panthers are now to where they were when Rule got fired. So that could be another reason why they haven't gone in the rookie quarterback yet.
Yeah, and while we were on the topic of Carolina, too, we should talk about the team they played this week. Those mighty Denver Broncos. I mean, that country is not riding very high right now. Russ looks horrible, and this is about the furthest fall-off I've seen from a QB in a long time. The fact that he went from a perennial top 10, borderline top 5 QB every single year since like 2014 to what he is right now, it's unbelievable. If you watch some of that game, Denver, Carolina, which I don't assume any of you did, I don't know why you would turn it on. This is just stuff I saw like on social media and things like that. The misses from him this weekend were horrible. And I'm not going to say like Denver's receivers were wide open or anything. They really weren't. But Russ is giving them no help either. And we saw from Russell Wilson, like he could throw receivers open in the past and he could maximize his wide receiver core really well. Like I don't think Tyler Lockett was necessarily supposed to be what Tyler Lockett was. And I think a large part of that was because of Russ. But this year, I mean, you could argue that he has some really good weapons. And I know that they've missed time, but man, I mean, he looks lost. And I'm really interested to see what happens this year because if you're Denver, why would you even want to move forward with him? I just think that there's no continuity there, and I don't really see a bright future with that relationship between Russ and Denver.
I don't either, but at the same time, they're like
they're
way
handcuffed.
too deep.
Yeah,
they're way too deep. I don't
no
know
one's trading for him.
Yeah, I don't like. You could cut him, but like, how would that look on your part?
Well, that's the thing that I was thinking of, and like, you think like you look at the repercussions of cutting him, and they are bad. You're going to take a huge cap hit, probably the biggest one in NFL history, because the Eagles took it with Wentz, and you look just disastrous trading that enormous haul for him and then the very next offseason cutting him. But at the same time, like I think you got to cut your ties and I think you just got to count your losses and move on. The Eagles did that and they lucked out finding Jalen Hurts, definitely. But at the same time, like it kind of springboarded them to what they are now, you know, a 10-1 team. And I'm not necessarily saying that Denver is going to be a 10-1 team in 2 years if they cut Russell Wilson. But also, you've hit a dead end on the Russell Wilson road. So I think you need to turn around and go find a new one.
You think there's like no going back for us?
It just what I see from him on the field, I don't see it. I think he's cooked.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't. It's hard for me to tell how cooked he is because again, outside of a couple of years where he was like kind of injured and the Seahawks just mostly ran the ball.
Yeah.
I can't tell if this is really the end for him. Maybe part of me just doesn't want me to believe it is, and that's just giving me like rose-colored glasses about that this is the end of his career. Maybe I'm just hoping that he has 1 or 2 decent years left after this, but I mean, the fact is now we're 10 weeks in, he's still under 10 touchdowns. You should have gotten at least 3 against the Panthers defense if you're a decent quarterback and have a decent team. And I know that the Broncos have struggled offensively, but to only get 1 passing touchdown, and that's the only touchdown you get the entire game, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
It really doesn't. Against that defense, like, oh,
yeah.
What a train wreck.
Again, the Panthers have been playing much better. Broncos offense just, Latavius Murray has been awesome, by the way, the last couple of weeks. It's been the only sort of sustainable offense the Broncos have had. Which isn't saying a whole lot, but still. He's a guy that has been mostly a backup his entire career, is now given the starting job, and looks good. It's the only reason the Broncos defense, like I said, did anything at all.
Right.
Yeah, and while we were talking about Russ, I just wanted to note that the Pro Bowl voting has started, and our friend Ari reported that Geno Smith leads all NFC quarterbacks with 70,000 votes. And are you guys shocked by this?
Not really, only because Geno Smith hasn't done anything, and now he's playing. I haven't looked at his stats in a while, but I know that he is playing well. The Seahawks are playing pretty well. So I think that fans want to reward Geno for the fact that he's now giving the starting job and did something with it when a lot of people were just assuming that he would completely fall out and Drew Lock would replace him by this point in the season.
Yeah, the Seahawks, they have got to be the surprise team of the whole NFL, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're 6-5, and that's much better than where people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be, like, trending toward, like, the top 3 draft spots in the next draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I just quickly pulled up Geno Smith's stats. Yeah, they're really quite good. Nearly 3,000 passing yards already, 19 TDs, only 5 interceptions, a 107.9 QB rating. Those are, and here's the thing, I personally think Jalen Hurts should be first. However, I do understand that there are still people hesitant to put quarterbacks with a lot of rushing touchdowns in over passing touchdowns. Because Hurts just doesn't have the passing touchdowns. He's a lot of rushing touchdowns, so the combined touchdowns are high. But voters don't necessarily look at that. Same thing with MVP voting. They don't really look at combined rushing touchdowns yet. I feel like it's going to change eventually, but this year it's just not the case.
Yeah. You know, I don't think Hurts is going to get any attention in that regard just because of how well Patrick Mahomes is playing.
Yeah.
And he deserves that award 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not going to argue it.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a LeBron thing. Like, if Mahomes is playing at that level, it's his award.
Yeah.
Like, he has to play out of the MVP a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Hurts should at least finish top 3, I would assume.
Yeah.
I think he will, too. I
he
don't
will.
see him not.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, too, like, the end of the season is going to hold a lot of weight, and 6 games is a lot of time left. So, like, I think when we are sitting here week 18, we'll be looking at Hurts top 3, definitely.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, again, looking at Geno's stats, he can finish top 5 possibly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and if they keep winning, too.
Amazing, considering where his career was at just in the preseason.
Yeah, right.
Good for him and good on the voters for rewarding him this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so while we're on the topic of Jalen Hurts, let's talk about that Eagles game. It was a high-scoring affair, 73 points total.
Mm-hmm.
That was nuts. Me and Slay were at the game. That was my first football game that I went to in person, and it was a good one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was starstruck seeing Rodgers. I was able to sneak down to like the lowest seats and just watch him throw around to Christian Watson for a little bit. And it was just a dream come true.
Yeah, really, man. I mean, that was my first time seeing Rodgers, too. And yeah, when you see an athlete of that caliber, he's a legendary NFL quarterback. We were lucky to see him, especially that close, too, like you said.
Yeah.
But to the game, I don't even know if the Packers really played all that well. I just think that the Eagles kind of gave them opportunities, especially on special teams. You know, special teams is the most overlooked aspect of a football game. And when your special teams is good, you won't think about it, you won't talk about it, you won't even mention it. But when your special teams is bad, it's glaring. And I think the Packers took 3 kickoffs beyond the 40-yard line. That does not happen in the NFL anymore. And the punt coverage, too, has been abysmal pretty much for the Eagles. And I think that allowed the Packers to kind of stay in the game, and then the Eagles offense sort of took over in the second half, and the defense settled in. So they were able to overcome their special teams deficiencies, but that was the most glaring part of the game for me, at least.
Yeah.
Was the special teams mishaps from Philadelphia.
Yeah, and even the A.J. Brown fumble, that was another opportunity where they got in like really good position. And then Rodgers threw the best throw I've ever seen in my life to Aaron Jones in the end zone.
And a great play by him, too.
Yeah. I that was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But we put them like so far in our field 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And you just can't do that. And I've never seen a team get that many opportunities to them. I think Aaron played well, but I think it would have been closer to a blowout if they didn't get placed where they got placed to start.
Yeah,
their
I agree.
drives.
I completely agree with you. And like, I think that the Eagles need to fix that, because when they play a team that is better than Green Bay, frankly, I mean, even if you played the Washington Commanders on that Sunday night game, like, you would have lost that game,
Yeah.
because those mishaps just can't happen. Teams are going to take advantage of field position, and field position can lose you games. It's a very important part.
Yeah, and the thing is, if anyone's going to talk about special teams, it's going to be the Packers, because that's the reason they lost last year.
Right,
Was
yeah.
due to special teams mishaps.
Mhm.
So if anyone knows this, it's Packers fans.
Yep.
So, and anyone who's an Eagles fan who watched what happened to the Packers last year should know you can't, like you just said, you can't overlook special teams at all.
Mm-mm.
Especially when you get to the playoffs, especially when you're going to have to play the team that the Packers lost to in the 49ers, which has a historically very good special teams. And teams are well coached in that aspect of the game. That is not something that you can cover in the playoffs. It's just not. You can do it in the regular season against a team like the Packers who've been really struggling this year. But I am very worried about what's going to happen to the Eagles when they have to face a good special teams that will take advantage of those mistakes. And adding off of that as well, teams that can take advantage of the field position they're getting.
Yeah.
Because as well as the Packers did that, sometimes they didn't do it every single time.
Yeah.
And there's going to be teams that can do that.
Yeah, while we're on an NFC East team too, and I just brought up the Commanders too, and what I said about the Commanders, I didn't mean to slander them. The Commanders are an average team. That's kind of what I was getting at. I think an average NFL team would have beat the Eagles on Sunday night.
Yeah.
But onto the NFC East, all 4 NFC East teams of this moment are in the NFC playoffs.
Yep.
All 4. Would you have thought you have said that in 2020? Hell no. Midway through 2020, well, no, actually at this point in 2020, I believe the 4-win Eagles were in first place. That is incredible. It's incredible to where this division has come. Like the re-rise of the NFC East, the NFC Beast, the most historical division in the NFL and the most success-rich division in the NFL. They're back. And honestly, I'm kind of rooting for the Commanders to make the playoffs because I think Dallas and New York are locked for the first 2. I think the race is for that last. And I'm rooting for the Commanders, to be honest with you.
Yeah, would that be history if all 3 of our...
I think so. No, yeah, definitely, because this is...
Because of the expanded wild card.
Yeah.
There's been teams with 3. There's never been a team with 4.
Yeah.
That would be a first-time thing, again, because of the expanded playoffs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Never would I thought that I would have thought that the division to do this would have been the NFC West.
Right, yeah.
And that's just not been the case at all. The other thing, Sly, you mentioned where it stands, the Commanders fighting out for the last spot because the Giants and Cowboys have their spots at 5 and 6 o'clock. The only other team that has an over 500 record right now in the NFC, besides all the NFC East teams and all the teams in first place in the divisions, is the Seahawks at 6 and 5.
Right.
I could see them doing it, but the other team is Atlanta, which Atlanta still has so many chances because the Buccaneers have struggled to win their division, but they just haven't got any consistency going at all. I really don't know what to make about them.
Yeah, Atlanta's a really weird team, and I could see them slipping behind Detroit in the race. Like I think Detroit might overtake them because they're only a win behind Atlanta.
Yeah,
Atlanta still has their bye.
I
So
100% agree. And if that happens, then they're definitely not getting the wild card, I don't think. But the NFC South, just because of the way the Buccaneers have played, especially their loss to Cleveland, which is just an absolutely insane game.
yeah.
It's really opened up the South to basically whoever. It's sort of what the NFC East has been, which whatever team is able to just stumble in will get the division.
Yeah, right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, again, not really what I thought about this division being. I really thought Tampa Bay was going to run away with it.
Yeah, that was the consensus opinion.
Yeah. Even with all the problems that they had with the injuries, even with all the personal problems Tom Brady's had, even though he's now 45 and just doesn't, as well as he plays, he's definitely not the same quarterback he was even 5 years ago, it still felt like the NFC South was so bad that they would have been fine. And the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons, evidently they played are only a couple games behind the Bucks.
Right, yeah. The Panthers are low-key in it. They're a win behind them, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Saints now are, too, they're only 4 and 7.
Oh, yeah.
And after their win, or 4 and 8, sorry, after their win this week. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Obviously, the Bucks win this week, because I think these teams, all the teams in the NFC South are on bye coming up. Because they have 12 games played. Most teams only have like 11, so their bye's coming up at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bucks best case scenario for them, we'll have a 2-game lead over somebody just with the buys.
Right.
But that's still not nearly enough with as badly as they've played.
Yeah. And maybe we should jump into what might be the biggest storyline of Week 13 coming up. Deshaun Watson's returning, and he's returning to Houston. Big storyline coming up. And so I saw a report that the lawyer who represented the accusers of Watson, he bought a suite for the game, and he's bringing a bunch of the accusers to that game. I think Watson is a good QB, and I think next year, the Browns will be good and Watson will be a good quarterback play-wise. But this game, I think Watson's going to look shell-shocked a little bit. Number one, I think Houston is going to pack the building, which is surprising for a team with one win. I think that this means so much, and it's so weird to say, but that might be the game of the week. The 9-1 Texans against the 5-7 Cleveland Browns. But this storyline really controlled the NFL this offseason. And it's all coming to an end, I guess. Not necessarily, but, technically an end, at least for this year, to this entire debacle that has lasted. I'm interested to see this game. I'm very intrigued, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm interested, like you said, Watson being shell-shocked. That's 100% a possibility. There's also the possibility that he's itching so much to play that he goes out and has a very, very good game, which I can also see happening. Maybe not what we expect of Deshaun Watson just because he hasn't played in so long. This year it's been close to 2 years now that he stepped on an NFL field.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Because he's been not injured the entire time. It's just been the suspension, him sitting out. There's so much chaos around him that it's going to be interesting to see how he leads the Browns. I have no issue with me saying that he's one of the most skilled quarterbacks in the NFL still.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Easily, every time he steps on the field, he's a top 5 quarterback, skill-wise.
Yeah.
But now there's all these other personal problems. I'm also interested to know, because this is a problem with the Texans when he wouldn't get traded, what is he like as a leader now? Has he changed at all? Has any of this changed him at all? If the answer is no, then I don't see the Browns rallying around him, which won't be only an issue for this year, but the future as well.
Yeah, that's what.
The problem when you pay the guy that much money to be your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too. Will players buy into him? Because the quarterback is the leader of the locker room. We see what a good leader can do to teams. Example, Jalen Hurts, and then we can see what a bad leader can do to teams. Example, Russell Wilson. And I don't think it's outlandish to say at all that Russell Wilson is more talented than Jalen Hurts. But the difference is Russell Wilson wasn't as good a leader of men as Jalen Hurts is. It's going to be really tough for people to buy into a guy like Deshaun Watson, a human being like Deshaun Watson. I just don't really know how that's going to work. I agree with you there.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think it comes down at this point, everyone in that locker room is going to judge Watson in some way, whether it's positively, negatively, whatever. There is already pre-made decisions about who Watson is as a person.
Yeah.
From the Browns locker room. So now it's just going to be it's going to go down to his ability.
Yeah.
Whether or not you buy into him.
Right.
Because you've already been around Watson. Yes, he hasn't played at all. Yes, he hasn't really participated too much with the team. But he's been there now for 13 weeks, 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not new to these guys.
Right. So you already know him from that aspect. So you switch your mind about him. No one really knows. No one's really talked about the Browns locker room situations all that much. There's still some COVID restrictions. Not necessarily restrictions still, but definitely you don't in the locker room as much as reporters were before COVID. That still hasn't really come back yet. So the Browns are able to keep this much more secretive than pre-pandemic when there's people in the locker room all the time, which probably is added to the Browns' benefit of bringing Watson in, that you don't have reporters around all the time. So now, though, players are going to have to buy into Watson's play. That's going to be the only thing that determines whether or not Watson can hold the Browns together or not for this year and the future.
Yeah, so I got a prediction for that game. I think the Texans are going to win that
I don't
game.
hate that at all. I like that.
So I also think Deshaun Watson's going to have a similar start as Ben Simmons did for this season. I mean, obviously not a skill thing at all, but he missed so much time and he got slandered even more than Ben did.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to get like a way worse reception than
Right.
Ben did.
Yeah, and like Ben,
He should.
Yeah.
Like, you can say whatever you want about Ben. Ben as a person has never done anything even close to what Watson
No.
did.
Allegedly. I'm not saying he did it, but
Okay,
there,
allegedly, yes, but still, there's never been, like, personal stuff for Ben. It's never happened to this extent.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think like I straight up think Deshaun Watson is a danger to our communities everywhere. Like I think people like him are dangerous. Ben Simmons is not that, and like the Ben Simmons stuff was pretty much purely basketball. You know, I think that a lot of people called his his character into question, including myself, but not to a Deshaun Watson extent. Like I don't think Ben Simmons is a bad person.
Yeah, and-
I don't know him with that, but I know Deshaun Watson is a terrible person. I know it for a fact.
yeah, and the fact that the accusers are going to be in the building, like I don't know how you play.
Yeah, and like the other thing is he's going to be asked that, coming up this week. They're going to ask him, "What do you think about the 10 accusers that are going to be in attendance at this game?" And like these are things that are going to be on his mind. He's going to walk into a stadium with a bunch of signs, with a bunch of people screaming at him. It's going to get in his head. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Hmm.
It's hard for it not to.
It definitely probably will do that as well. Although, the thing is about Watson is he's played, and again, this isn't a defensive at all, it's just stating the facts. He's played in very high-tense situations before, even as a young quarterback playing for Clemson.
Right.
Maybe not to the extent of his personal life is now going to be part of his football life. Maybe not to that extent, but still, he's dealt with some pressure situations that not many quarterbacks have to at that young an age. So he already kind of has that mentality going for him, probably, of it's like, okay, I can make this another football game. Already played for a national championship. I haven't done that in a while because I played with a really bad Texans team, but I know what it's like to sort of block out the noise and just focus on myself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, there's some quarterbacks that we thought would be able to do that this year that haven't. Tom Brady's a great example. And again, very different circumstances. However, people thought that Tom Brady was almost machine-like in the sense that whatever was going on in his life, he could silence out. He's sort of been able to do that more now, but at the beginning part when all those rumors were coming out about him, he really couldn't.
Right.
So, and if Tom Brady can't do that, I don't know if Deshaun Watson fully can. Again, I think that he'll try to, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this game.
No, I agree with that 100%.
I think we hit all the main points with NFL, so we could talk NBA for really briefly.
Yeah.
I was watching this Jimmy High Roller video, and he was going over like how many guys are like having insanely historic seasons, and it's going to be like impossible to pick one MVP because 9 guys to this point are playing
Really.
like the front runner unanimous MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you got guys like Joel Embiid and KD that are not even in the top 8 of
Yeah.
voting.
Uh-huh.
And Joel Embiid almost had a 60-point quadruple-double, and Kevin Durant has played every single game this season and scored 20 points.
Right, yeah.
At least 20 points.
And it's like he's on the longest streak, I'm pretty sure. Or
Yeah.
one of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has been crazy what's gone on in the NBA this year. Like you guys both mentioned, it's been so much fun to watch, and it makes you also appreciate when you have a guy on your team like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially, like, you watched what Embiid did last night against the Hawks. He dominated the last 5 minutes of that game. The Sixers don't win if he's not playing.
Both ends of the floor, too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Luka's been going crazy for Dallas. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Oklahoma City, a team that was not expected to win it all. He's averaging 31 a game. That's something that Oklahoma City it brings fans to games even when your team's not going to play well, when you have a guy like
Yeah, and like Shea, I had a discussion about Shea with a guy on social media earlier in the season, and I said, I think that this is going to be Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's breakout season. And he said that last year was Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's breakout season. And I didn't really disagree with him because Shea had a really good season last year. But like you mentioned, he's averaging 31 points a game, and he's put himself into the early NBA MVP conversation. That's leaps and bounds above what we thought he was going to do this year. And you brought up Luka too. And I just got a tweet from StatMuse. Only one player has recorded a 40-point triple-double this season. Luka Doncic has done it 5 times. He's the only player with a 40-point triple-double. He's done it 5 times. He's had an amazing season. And we haven't even mentioned Jason Tatum yet from the Boston Celtics, the best team in the league. He's been the best player on the best team in the league. Honestly, I think Tatum is my MVP right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, Giannis to me is also out there just Giannis and basically does what he does every single night. But there is, like you guys said, there was at least 5 candidates I'm looking at right now. At least 5.
Yeah.
That could easily win MVP on any given year, and they're all just doing it this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is like where you just start to wonder, like, if they really need to start just focusing on what team has the most success from the most valuable player of the year.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been doing that, obviously, because the Sixers have been better than the Nuggets the years that Jokic won.
Yeah.
And
Embiid put up like similar stats to him, and they still took the Jokic nod.
yeah, and now you got guys that that are playing so well that you can't even compare them to each other. And you have to revert back to what you used to do and just go to the best player on the best team, because you can't really formulate an argument over how Luka's having a better season than Shea or vice versa, because they're both not on teams that are going to make a run, but obviously Giannis is not having as good of a season as those two, but the team is way better off than him, and he's way more responsible for their team success than those two guys are.
Yeah.
And personally, I think Luka Doncic is going to win it. I know that kind of contradicts what I said, but I don't think the league is going to follow my style of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to have the most impressive stats up until the end of the season. I think that's what's going to end up doing it.
I could definitely see that. I think Luka, not necessarily the way he scores, but in the volume that he does score, he reminds me of a Kobe Bryant, where he could put up 35 any given night he wants to, and that could carry him to an MVP. Kobe's only MVP was 06, which he averaged 36, I'm pretty sure, that year. And I think that it's going to take something like that for someone to win MVP. Someone's going to have to average 30-something points a game. And
over 35.
Yeah, right.
I'm saying.
And it could be him or
right
Tatum.
Now, there's 5 guys that are averaging 30 or above.
Yeah.
So someone's going to have to bring out an average 35, which is insane. I don't think it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, that's the level you're going to have to play at.
Yeah, or at least something of that caliber, averaging 35 a game, something of that degree,
Mm-hmm. I think Joel missed the bus, though, with winning. I think he's never going to win an MVP, though, if the league stays this way.
Yeah, and I'm kind of sad about that. I mean, there is obviously a lot of season left, but also at the same time, is having a lot of season left a positive or negative for Embiid because of his injury history? So, yeah, I kind of agree with you that the ship has sailed for him on that front. I still think Depoy, which he's expressed a lot of times he's really, really wanted that award. I think could still be in conversation for that. And obviously the main one is the title. I still think, I think when the Sixers started the season, it was easy to say, this team is discombobulated and they're really going to just fizzle out. But that hasn't really been the case of the last couple of weeks. They've really been playing better basketball as a team, and this is without 2 of their 3 best players. And they missed Embiid for a couple. They missed Toby for a couple. The role players have really stepped up. I think that they're going to end the season really strong, and the Sixers are still my finals pick.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I also want to point out another player who we talked about a couple weeks ago who's having a great season. Do you guys know who the highest scoring center is in the league by any chance?
Anthony Davis.
Yes, it is. He also has the most rebounds out of any player in the NBA.
Wow.
So,
right after we said that he was trash.
Right after you guys said that. Just a reminder.
Yeah, we being me and Jack.
Yes. That's another look. I don't know what's going on this year, but I picked the Vikings to finish first in the NFC. You guys called that a bad pick. You guys both said Davis was out of the top 20. I said he was in the top 20. Look, all I'm saying is I think I needed a podcast to prove how much I know sports.
Yeah, I'm just saying he could slip on a banana peel tomorrow, and that could be it for him.
That's what I said about him is that the injury concern injured, but this is what I also said. When he's on the court, he's a top 20 player. If you don't hold injuries against him, that's totally valid. But my point is, when he's on the court, he's a top 20 player.
That is
and
fair.
he's proving it. He's proving it.
He is proving it, but is it translating to team success, which is the point I was making with all these other guys in the MVP?
I do agree with. I see what you're saying, but I just think it's out of his control. I think the Lakers are such a dumpster fire right now.
Because when he went to Lakers, he did not know that the Lakers were going to be run by like 5 different people, one of which included LeBron James,
Right.
who's done a terrible job with everything that's going on. Like, the Lakers are a dumpster fire that is on a barge going to Antarctica. Like, they are horrible.
Yeah.
A horrible basketball team that has no direction at all. But the one guy you can lean on at this point is Anthony Davis, which was not supposed to be the case when he joined up with LeBron.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the Lakers, just to name a couple teams who are above them right now in the standings and look a lot better than them that you didn't expect to be ahead of LA. Pelicans, Trailblazers, Kings, Utah Jazz, Oklahoma City Thunder. That's 5 teams right there. You're halfway through an NBA playoff pool right there. So the Lakers are so far behind the 8 ball, and me and Jack were wrong on Anthony Davis, no doubt. I mean, he's been proving it and then some. But we all, now we can include Aiden and we all were right about the Lakers as a whole. And I think that it's going extremely downhill. And I hope that this prediction of mine comes true. I think they are going down the LeBron James trade route.
I want to see it.
I really want to see it. I really want to see it.
I could see it. I think it just depends. Because, look, as bad as this team is, they've been playing a little bit better than they were. They're now 5-2 in their last 7 games, which, again, for as bad as they started, it's not great. For how competitive the West is, it definitely wasn't great. But things could slowly turn around to where they're a play-in team. I know that's not what they want. That's not what anyone wants if you're a Lakers fan, if you're part of the Lakers organization. However, I think you just have to accept that's where the team's at this point. Maybe you go on a hot streak. I don't see it happening without how competitive the West is. But I think if you're around the playoffs, maybe you don't. But if things go real bad, and they easily could, like we talked about, Anthony Davis is basically made of glass. At some point, he'll get hurt. Mm-hmm. At some point, just as LeBron's trajectory has gone in his career, he'll probably get hurt as well. So I could easily see it happening, again, if the Lakers are really, really that bad.
Yeah, and last night, obviously the Lakers blew a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter to the Pacers. And I was watching Pardon the Interruption today, and Michael Wilbon shared a stat on a LeBron James team that is up 17 points in the fourth quarter. They were 432-1.
Wow.
And last night was the second time a LeBron James team has ever blown a 17-point fourth quarter lead. I just think that's a tale of the times for now for the Lakers, unfortunately.
Can we even call the LeBron-led team anymore? Can we just say
right.
Anthony Davis is leading the Lakers?
Yeah, we should. We really should. Yeah, we should call it what it is. And that's Anthony Davis is the best player on that team, when he's on the floor right now.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron scored 39 against San Antonio, but when you look at who's been the leading scorer the other 3 games, it was Anthony Davis with 37 with their loss to Phoenix. Their win over San Antonio the first time was Anthony Davis scoring 25, and then last night he scored 25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Anthony Davis is definitely the best player for them.
So
yeah, it's been a mess for the Lakers.
Oh, we should talk about the World Cup because, USA won today.
Yep.
Big win. I didn't get to see it because I was at school and the Wi-Fi blocked Stream East, so unfortunate. But I saw the USA controlled possession throughout the entire game. They tripled their shots on goal, at least, from Iran.
Yeah.
And Christian Pulisic had that header, and that did the job.
I caught the second half. I didn't watch the whole game, but I caught the second half, and I have to say, I'm really impressed with how entertaining the last 15 minutes or so of that game was. Like, probably from the 84th minute on. That was an extremely, extremely entertaining ending, and especially the added 9 minutes. Those 9 minutes were incredibly, incredibly tense, especially if you were a USA fan. Like, you are just cringing the whole time. Iran got very close 2 times, and especially the one where they wanted the penalty kick towards the end. I don't know the rules about soccer enough to say whether it was or wasn't a penalty, but the general consensus from what I've seen was that it wasn't a penalty. But I mean, you were that close. Like you were one bad referee call from getting a free kick for Iran. So, it was extremely entertaining. And like the World Cup every 4 years is like the Olympics. You're just glued to it pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say when it comes to that penalty, so Jack or Slay, you were listening to this. So it was the same ref that was reffing the Ecuador-Qatar game in the first game of the World Cup, where there was a way more egregious foul call that should have been made up for Qatar, and it wasn't called by this ref.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that he's reffed has been much more lenient. It was very debatable whether it should have been a foul. If you go with a ref that it makes every single call, I would say it probably would have been.
Mm-hmm.
But with this specific ref, had he done that, then he would have been a huge hypocrite for that first game.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good call for him. If it had been ref differently, then it's one of those 50-50 calls where it goes either way.
Yeah.
But I thought that it was a good call. Matt Turner, by the way, for the United States goalkeeping, amazing job in that last minute. Because Iran was putting up a lot of pressure. They had nothing to lose at that point. Like, they had to. And it could have been very easy for another goalkeeper to sort of break at that moment, and he just looked so confident in that. And that's got to feel very, very good for the United States, who's going to be playing a tough Netherlands team on Saturday.
And this is a weird observation. Like, I was talking to my dad, and he was explaining to me, like, sometimes when you watch countries in the World Cup, you could see, like, little glimpses of, like, the country's overall style and, like, how the people are and, like, how they play. And he said his biggest takeaway with the U.S. was they take chances. Like, they're not really looking for getting passes, like, give and goes. They're like, they want to drive down and they want to take a shot. And you don't really see that from many other teams because they're way more orthodox. But you see the U.S., they consistently take chances, and it's been working well for them so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've definitely been very aggressive. The only issue is with that aggressiveness is that when it doesn't pay off, you can easily lose games. Like that England game, they were super aggressive the entire time and didn't score a goal. And the issue is when you're so aggressive on offense, and you saw that against Iran today, and then you turn the ball over, you might not be able to get back in time. And I think they're too young of a team to sort of understand that being aggressive doesn't always work. And I think that's just the style that they're going to go with at this point, is just be the aggressive team. We're not supposed to be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So why would we slow up at all?
Yeah. I think it's smart for them to play to their strengths, too,
Mm-hmm.
It is. Oh, 100%, because they just are a very athletic, fast team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the strength that they're going to go with.
Yeah.
So, and they're not one of those teams, look, they're not England, they're not Germany, they're not Argentina that can just slow the game down themselves and break another team. Like England today against Wales, England's, first of all, one of the top teams in the world, so this might be an unfair comparison to Wales, who was one of the worst teams. I think they were second worst to Qatar going to the World Cup. But England just controlled the ball, waited for the chance, and took advantage of it late. They weren't necessarily, they definitely had some early shots, but it was more, we're going to slow down the game to our pace and find space. The United States doesn't really find space, they make their own space, which is an interesting style to go with in a World Cup against countries that are very good, especially European teams are good about slowing down and waiting for the game to come to them.
Aiden, were there any matchups that stood out to you other than the U.S. and England games?
I mean, not too much. It was pretty obvious that Netherlands was going to win Pool A. The biggest thing that should be surprising, but the biggest takeaway is how bad Qatar was.
Yeah.
They were straight up awful the entire World Cup. They didn't get a single win, which, as a host country, is horrific. They should never been allowed. We talked about this last time, where they shouldn't have been allowed to host at all. Anyway, the fact that they were able to host is a huge black mark on FIFA as the organization. You've got to find countries that can play soccer at least a little bit. Even South Africa, which wasn't a great soccer country, still was able to come away with a win in their World Cup. And it was still an enjoyable World Cup to watch South Africa in. Brazil hosted 2014. Obviously, Brazil is a huge soccer country. Even Russia, when they hosted, which I didn't love the fact that Russia was allowed to host, they're still a decent soccer country. Had they not been blocked by FIFA for competing in qualifying game, which I think they should have been considering everything going on with them, they had a chance to make it to the World Cup. And now you just sort of allow this country that doesn't have any history in soccer, that probably will never be talked about on the international stage again, to host. Is just kind of ridiculous to me. Considering there's so many other countries that could have been allowed to host.
Mm-hmm. And I really want to get it in really quick because I don't think we've talked about the U.S.-England game. That was like a really impressive showing because like that I made this comparison to someone who like doesn't really know anything about the World Cup. I kind of said it was like the Chiefs tying the Texans right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that the U.S. is that bad, but I'm saying the gap between England and the U.S. is like that stark.
It's supposed to be. I don't really know what it is. I'm still haven't been able to make of what this U.S. team is. I think they have a really bright future, but the fact that they tied Wales in a game that they should have won was not a great start. The draw against England was huge, but them being around only 1-0, and the fact Iran had so many late chances, I just don't. It's going to be interesting what happens in this game against the Netherlands. This will prove what the United States team is.
Mm-hmm.
As for future games tomorrow, I'm very excited for Poland versus Argentina. I think that will be a very competitive game. Argentina should probably win, but the fact that they lost to Saudi Arabia in the opener does not make me that confident in them to beat a much better Poland team than Saudi Arabia is supposed to be. Pretty much, I could see all four of them, conventionally sneaking in tomorrow, depending on what happens. I can see Saudi Arabia beating Mexico after the way they played in the first game against Argentina. If Poland or Argentina lose and Saudi Arabia beats Mexico, I see Mexico making it in if they beat Saudi Arabia. So this is going to be a huge day tomorrow in Group C. Group D, tomorrow's games, basically it's run away with. I don't know who Australia's playing. They might be playing Denmark, so they might not make it, but France is already totally qualified for their game. It just depends what seed they finish for who they play next. But yeah, those Group D is not very exciting. But Group C tomorrow, definitely one to look out for.
All right, you guys got anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay. All right, I think.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. We'll catch you next Saturday at 2 p.m. Be on the lookout, and we'll see you next time.